Hello there. Today I'm sharing the details of a card that I had posted previously over on my Instagram and Facebook. It's a sushi slider card using Sweet Stamp Shop's Sushi Fun. Since this set had a lot of images, I wanted to create a custom background scene. And for most of this set, I just used sticker paper to stamp the images and used cardstock for that one image that I'm using with the slider. I'm coloring these images with mainly Spectrum Noir markers, and all the colors will be listed in the description bar below. I did really quick coloring because the background was my main focus for this card, and I had run the images on the sticker paper through my scan and cut, so they created stickers for these. For the solo image on the cardstock, once I finished coloring, I just went ahead and fussy cut it. And I think you can tell from the final card that the background is relatively simple, and it is created from a bunch of lines. I envisioned one of those restaurants that have sushi on a conveyor belt, and you just pick up whatever dish you want as it comes by. So I'll mark off some lines for the table, the wall of the conveyor, the guard to the conveyor belt, the space between, and the top part of the conveyor. And I'll list my specifications down below as well, but it's really up to your preference of how things look, and you probably don't even need specific dimensions at all. You can probably just wing it and it'll look fine. So once I finished marking off these lines in pencil, in case I made any mistakes, I originally took a Memento ink black marker, but it wasn't thick enough, so I switched to a .1 Copic multiliner pen to go over the lines. And once I finish that, I'll erase all my pencil marks. And I'll go ahead and color these in using the broad tip of a Spectrum Noir marker, which makes it super easy. And as you can see, there's no rhyme or reason, and I'm just easily swiping it up and down, and that's how I'm coloring. There's not really any dimension except for the gray areas where I'll add like a darker color and blend it out. And for the area above the conveyor belt, I picked out a light teal color, but once I put it down, it didn't look bright enough for me, so I used a darker color. For the conveyor belt itself, I used a dark gray color to mark off the lines diagonally and used a lighter color just to color it in. For the table portion of this card, I masked off with a post-it, and I'm using a Create a Smile wood grain cling stamp to stamp this off. And I'm using my Misty because there's a lot of thin lines, so I want to make sure that all the parts of this wood grain pattern show up. And I'll easily color this table using distress inks. I also realized that on the table, I didn't want to put the food items directly on it, so I drew out some plates so the items could sit on it. And I realized that the sushi on the conveyor belt had no dish, but let's ignore that. And since I used sticker paper for most of these images, putting the card together was really easy. I didn't have to mask or anything. I just put it directly onto my finished background. So I'm putting down the soy sauce and the plates and putting on the little sushi pieces onto the plate. And I add a little shadow to the bottom of it just so it looks grounded and gives it a little bit more dimension. I'll also use a black marker to do a little touch up if there's any white spaces. I also realized that for the wasabi there was no little dish, so I just free-handed another one so the wasabi has something to sit on and is not directly onto the table. Once I finished with the dish and all the other items for the table portion of the card, I'll go ahead and take the Just Rolling By sentiment from the stamp set and stamp it directly onto the card. And usually I'll stamp it just using acrylic block, but sometimes with sentiments, especially straight ones, I have a hard time getting it to look straight. So I move on to creating the slider channel using Sweet Sam Shop's slider trio and the straight one. So once I place it directly on the conveyor belt, I'll run it through my Big Shot. So I picked out a sea green piece of cardstock for the card to match the area in between the conveyor. And I wanted to leave a bit of a frame around the card, so I'll trim that front panel down just a little bit. For the slider, I'm using a penny and a slider tab from My Favorite Things. I'm adding score tape to both sides of that slider tab. And I'm using a penny because of the weight. It allows the slider to move freely along the slider channel. For the front panel, I'm adding 2 layers of foam tape to the back of it. 2 layers will give the slider channel enough height so that the slider won't get caught or stuck when it moves I'll take that piece that I had die cut out with the slider channel and line it up with the front panel so I can adhere it to the cardstock. I do this so that as the sushi moves along, you'll see the conveyor and not the sea green cardstock. Before I place that front panel to the cardstock, I'll place the penny directly onto the slider channel and I'll remove the release paper for the foam tape behind that front panel and add it directly to the card. Once I finish that, I'll add the sushi to the slider tab. And the card is finished once I add the panel to an A2 card base. I think this is a really fun card, and the background seemed kind of complicated, but it was really easy. It was basically comprised of lines. So you can always create your own background if the images from a stamp set don't provide enough to do so. So I hope you enjoyed this card, and I'll see you next week for another video. Have a great day. Bye.